everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Human Experience Podcast. This is your girl, Rashida, aka Righteous Sun, and on today's episode, we are talking all about the power of ritual, small practices that transform your day. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Yes, share with family and friends and those who you feel will vibe with this message. With that being said, let's get into it. Welcome. It is another episode of the Ultimate Human Experience Podcast. And of course, as you know, I can't do this by myself. I love to connect with other people, especially other practitioners and those who can bless us with not only their gifts, but as well as their wisdom and their insight. And today is a super special day. Of course, we are welcoming in practitioners, Shelley and Miriam from the Hira Collective. Welcome, guys. How are you doing today?
Very
We're
good,
doing
thank you.
very well, thank you.
Great. So, of course, I feel like I can't even do it justice if I introduce you. So, can you please, both of you, share what it is that you do and how you bless this world, as well as how you are blessing the Hira Collective with your gifts and your offerings? Shelley?
Thank you so much. So my name is Shelley King, and I am an intuitive energy worker. I work with Reiki energy medicine. Geez, I'm a tarot reader. I'm a crystal healer. I'm a crystal reader. There's a lot of aspects that I bring, and I try to incorporate all of those. I love learning, so I continually learn new techniques and love to share those and my wisdom with anyone who connects with me.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Miriam?
Hello, my name is Miriam, and I'm a tarot reader and astrologer, and I bring a lot of practical insight into my readings. I can look into so many issues that you may be struggling with, and I focus a lot on making decisions and problem solving and all that. But I can also look into past lives, because you know what? There's a lot of stuff that's happened in our past lives that are impacting us today. And I can do that actually more with astrology than tarot, but I can also do that with tarot as well. So yeah, I mean, that's basically what I do.
Thank you both. Amazing gifts. And I think it's perfect as we talk about this topic of the power of ritual and creating practices that can help you throughout your everyday life. I'll just get right into it. As not just as practitioners, but even just for yourself, both you, Shelley, and Miriam, did you ever find that growing up, there were specific things that you noticed within your families that were, I guess you could say, not ritual, but practices that would happen? Sometimes we would do like every Sunday, we would have dinner at the table, whatever it might be. Was there something that you had prior to that kind of helped form you to create practices that you might incorporate today?
Not really. Not really. You know what? I just did it on my own because there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of chaos growing up. And I mean, we do have like a Friday night dinner now, but that wasn't until, I don't know, last 25 years or so. But it wasn't something that we did while I was growing up. I've created my own rituals just based on what I intuitively feel is right for me to create.
It's funny because I was very similar. We had a lot of non-ritual happen in our life, and it was just kind of dodge the drama. The one thing that we did have that was kind of ritual, but it was really bribery, was church and then lunch out at McDonald's. And that was it.
Oh,
That
wow.
was the extent. And again, it was bribery. It wasn't a ritual.
Yeah.
Now that you talk about like that you didn't have anything, to be honest, I never really did either. I think every so often we would make sure that we ate dinner at the table, but it was never a positive experience. It was just like, well, everybody just has a seat at the table because like my mom didn't want a mess anywhere else, right? So I agree with you that I never really had any practices that I carried into adulthood. Do you feel like that in some way shaped how you view the world? And did you ever pay attention to perhaps other people around you who had certain things in their lives that they were doing on a regular basis, whether it's like your peers growing up? Because like I noticed that my family was very different in terms of like, there was others that like, whether it was every March break, they went to Florida or whatever. I started to realize like, well, that's not happening with my family. And everybody was really doing their own separate thing. And as a kid, I realized like, this isn't fun. And I had to start creating my own fun, like just through imagination and things like that. And now that I am a mom, I realize that there's certain things that I try to make sure I make a habit of. And not just like a habit, but also like create it more as like a lifestyle so that I can make sure that there's this bond within the family dynamic that hopefully they can then carry on if they choose to have children. So do you find for yourselves that there was moments where you realized like, I don't have this, but I'm noticing other people do. And like when I get older, like I want to either create something like that for myself?
That's an interesting question. I mean, here's the thing. I used to be a people pleaser, like an extreme people pleaser, and I wanted to keep up with the Joneses because I really never fit in. I was picked on a lot because I was obviously different since the moment I was born. And the thing is that I just craved to fit in, right? I just wanted to fit in. So I wanted to keep up with the Joneses and I just wanted to do what everyone else was doing, not even so much anything to do with family per se, but just others. I'll just say that I went through a lot of trauma involving caregiving where I just did not end up even knowing who I was. I mean, I blew up to 300 pounds. It was just horrible. And that was my tower moment. The tower moment was, it was going to be, I'll just say it was going to be a life and death situation. Okay. So I had to make a bold decision that society would have frowned upon, but I didn't care. My well-being of all of us was in jeopardy if I didn't make this decision. So I made it. It took me a long time to heal and to drop the weight. I mean, I did lose a lot of weight after this was over. But during the pandemic, I ended up gaining a lot of it back. Now I'm back to, just reversing the damage. So ever since, it wasn't immediately after, but ever since then, I slowly began to know who I was, and I just started not giving a hoot about what other people thought of me and what other people thought of anything that I did. I'm doing what I know is right. Okay, for me. I know I'm doing what I know is right. I no longer keep up with the Joneses. I don't care. I do what's best for me now. And that's talking about things that I know that other people may not necessarily like, and that's okay. I'm not here to please others anymore. You know what I mean? So I suppose you can say that's my story.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate it.
So in my world, nothing was normal. I grew up with a single mom. So back in the day, I was the only one who had one parent and no father. You know, it was interesting. The one thing that my family did for me beyond anything that they could have done, because financially was whatever. So there was no keeping up with the Joneses. I was unique. But the love that they gave me, despite the loss that I had, was what kept me going. And that's what actually led me to everything that I do now, is because that love that was fostered in me and the ability to realize it. Because there's a lot of things when we're growing up that we work through on our own. There's things I would have never said to my mom that I worked through. And I wouldn't have said it to her because A, it wasn't anything that she needed to know. And it would have likely hurt her, because she couldn't have done anything to change it. And that's hard for a mom to handle. So I just kept it. But knowing that she was there for me every time I needed her, or my grandparents, that made the best difference in my life, which allowed me to balance everything else. Wasn't perfect. I've done a lot of growing and learning since I've become an adult, but it was the one basis that led me to be who I am today and to share the way I do today. So.
Thank you. I love how both of you not only just shared your experiences, but also shared it with this compassion for yourself in terms of how you showed up in those situations. Because the truth is, we're all very different. And yes, there are some people who just keep up with the Joneses. They keep up with what society tells them. It's just something, it's a habit, right? It's something that's been taught to them. And some people can't switch that, even though there are moments where they want to, but they have that fear that they might be judged within their family or even just within their peers. But to be able to step away from that and then not only step away, but own it, empower yourself, and then celebrate, such a beautiful thing that needs to be just honored. And I'm very thankful that you've both been able to share that today. For myself, I can agree. Like, I can definitely resonate with what both of you said. I was very different from the rest, but I was okay with that too. Like, I was like, I don't want to be like everybody else. Like, I don't want to wear the same shirt that everybody else is wearing. I'm gonna wear the shirt that is like completely different. And I was okay with people either looking at me different or I didn't even want to fit in. I think I had moments where I was like, oh, maybe I should. You know, you start to question, like, maybe I should be fitting in. But then when I tried, it just never worked. So I thought, you know what, it's better to just be on my own. And that kind of carried me through to like where I am today. So I resonate with what both of you are saying. When we talk about ritual, I think sometimes people get scared of that word. I think people think when anybody says this ritual that they have, I think they feel like a bunch of witches are coming together and conjuring and working up some type of spell. And so many people either shy away from it or very nervous or are very judgmental of that word, especially if you were raised in the church, right? They share things where you really believe that that is the only way. And if you veer away from that, then you're going straight to hell and it's blasphemy. But we're now in a time where we've got social media and people are outing a lot of things. People who were in the church, I have a lot of friends, even myself, I was in the church for a really long time as well. And then I veered away from that, but I also noticed how people treated me when I chose to do that as well. So what is this thing? What is this thing about the way that people view the word ritual as well as like, I mean, we're all practitioners here and healers. What do you think that viewpoint is for those who view that as something that's a negative?
Well, luckily for me, I wasn't raised like that. So, I mean, the one thing I can say about my family is that they were a little more open-minded about this kind of stuff. And in fact, we used to go to psychic fairs. I just remember one time when I was 16, I went to the psychic fair and I was really, really enamored with it. And I didn't suddenly start tapping into my gifts at that point. That didn't happen until after my daughter was born when I was 26 years old. But anyway, like they were just open. So we never really had a negative connotation when it came to the word ritual. But I can certainly understand how, in some cases, with other families, especially if they were raised with a really strong religious upbringing, that that would scare them off. So, I
So
mean,
I'm a little bit different again
okay.
because I did get raised in the church
Hmm.
and I actually still go to church.
Okay.
Luckily, it's a much more open church, and we actually had a minister who came in who talked about being a tarot reader and going through the mysticism, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yay!
I'm happy to
But
hear that, actually.
I
I'm
am
quite happy to
too.
hear that.
I
Yeah.
was so thrilled.
Yeah.
What's interesting about it though is for years I didn't tell my family anything because I didn't know how they would take it. My
Okay.
grandparents never knew. My mom just found out. My mother-in-law actually knew before my mom did, just because she was more open to it and we would go to psychic fairs. My mom was never closed off to it, but I didn't know how she would look at it, so I just kind of kept it quiet.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable. So that's good though. That's very good.
Yeah, but what's interesting is there are so many rituals in the church. I don't understand how they can have a problem with the word. It's when it's
Mm,
not conforming to them that the problem comes in.
Yeah, I suppose. I suppose. I mean, I'll just say that there was never an issue with that word at all with my family. But like I said, there was no real emphasis on religion, not in that way anyway. So that's interesting though. I never really thought about that. I never really thought about the word ritual being problematic to anyone because, as you said, even if you're religious and you go to church, or there's rituals with that, right?
Everywhere, all through it, every Sunday, every Wednesday, if you're Catholic or whatever, there's huge rituals.
Yeah, I agree with what both you're saying. I never thought that there was a problem with it. But when you think about other religions and you mention or you bring up things like psychic or tarot or anything along those lines, it is considered something that is a negative. But then, Shelley, you then mentioned that, like, you're right, within the church and within many religions, there are many things that are ritual, meaning that it's something that's consistent, something that happens on a regular basis. And yet when it's not in conform with their own beliefs and their own system, then it is definitely, it's not right. It's looked at as negative.
And we have a
How do
lot
you,
of, sorry,
yeah,
we have a
no, go
lot
ahead,
of
go ahead.
people who stand by what they've read in certain works that you can break it down. If you do a little more research, you can usually counteract all those things further along in that same work. So it's very particular, and the people who are closed off to that and picking those, specific aspects, they're not open to other things. So it doesn't matter what you do, what you say, you're never going to be able to convince them, because that's also not our job. Our job isn't to convince them. Our job is to let them live how they want, as long as we're all at peace. At least it is for me. Like, I'm not here to convince anyone that this is the right way. There's a lot of different paths that take you to the same place.
Yeah, for
I love how
sure.
you
And I
said
mean,
that.
this is the way I see it. I don't care what anyone does as long as they're not hurting anyone. I don't really care. I mean, everyone's got to walk their own path. And even if their path doesn't align with mine, I don't care. That doesn't matter. As long as they, like I said, don't harm anyone, including themselves, or judge me for what I want to do. Hey, you do you, Like, no judgment. Everyone's got to go with their truth. I'd rather that if someone is, really like sticks to, say, Christian values, I'd rather they do that than to pretend that they are into tarot. You know what I mean? Don't just do what aligns with you, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of finding what works for you. I think that has been the theme this week as I've been recording podcasts, is a lot like finding things that work for you because everybody is different. I know we all have a tendency to want to watch what other people are doing and emulate. But what has been said throughout this week is, rather than emulating someone, taking bits and pieces of what it is that they share and finding ways to apply it to you, because everybody's day looks different, right? So someone who is trying to fit something in that it doesn't even fit into their day can at the end cause stress or cause you to be stuck. And then in the end, you put too much pressure on yourself trying to achieve something that may not be beneficial for you, right? Maybe it's better that it's like smaller increments versus trying everything all at the exact same time. This big whoosh, this wave might be too much, and trying just dipping your feet in the water might be best. What was your moment for both of you where you realized that incorporating certain practices in your day was something that was needed? Like, as soon as I became a mom, I realized I needed quiet moments. So before that, I was just school, and then it was right into work. And then when I got pregnant, I realized I was super stressed, and I had a suggestion from someone to try yoga. And that was my first time at 24 realizing, like, oh, I really think I should try this. And I was hooked. I was like, I didn't know you could feel this peaceful in like this environment. And then I would come back out. It was downtown. And then I would come back out and be like, whoa, I noticed a huge difference. And I want to stay in that yoga studio for my entire pregnancy. But I realized, like, well, how can I now take that experience and take it out into my everyday life? And then that's where it really got me thinking about meditation, and how I could teach my son and all of my kids that in those moments of stress, I could help them to find ways to practice just mindfulness, to be aware of their body and how they felt in those moments, and ways that I could create something where they can then create it for themselves, right? In those moments when they're like, I'm feeling stressed, I didn't want to tell them what to do, but I wanted to encourage them to find things that worked for them, because I found things that worked for me. I know meditation wouldn't work for my kids. No, they're not going to sit still. But if they can find things in drawing, right, in art or in writing, things that would help them to de-stress, was something that I realized was like, oh, I can at least do that. Like, no, they're not going to do yoga with me, but if they can just go out for a walk, like encourage them to do that. So those are the practices that I felt were small, but at the end they would come back to me and be like, it was huge for them. And I was like, okay, let's find what works for you, find what you love. So what were those practices for yourself that you continue to use?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this. I didn't really discover anything. I couldn't cope while I was dealing with that hell that I was just sort of talking about earlier. But after that was removed and everything, I slowly started to discover what was easy for me to handle. I gotta say that I don't do meditation very well. Not in the classical way. I just don't. I get squirmy. But here's the big but. I get into a meditative state when I go for like a walk in the woods. I live right by the woods and I love that. I take my dog for a walk every morning. It doesn't matter how cold it is. I mean, unless it's a blizzard or it's pouring rain, I wouldn't do it. But otherwise, just bundle up and take the dog for a walk while I go in the woods and get into a meditative state. That really does help me reset things. Writing, yeah, well, I'm a writer as well, right? So writing definitely does help, and listening to music helps. So I mean, things like that is very important. And the other thing is that 2 p.m. every night I go into shutdown mode. I will not work. Some people do, and then that's just, but I can't do it. By the time it's 9 o'clock, nope, I'm not working. I'm not working. I go into shutdown mode. I'm gonna binge watch some videos that relax me, because I can get on with the next day just fine if I'm able to do that, right? So there's that.
I have the same with in regards to there wasn't a specific time. It was was doing a lot of learning. I was picking books that were inspirational as opposed to just escapism. And so there was a constant routine in that where it's meditate, do this, do that. And I'm like, oh, fine. But the same type of thing, I didn't meditate well. I actually fall asleep. Now, there are some meditations that are great. You can sleep through them. Fantastic. I do find going for a walk is really great. I used to walk to work way back when, before I had a car, and I literally would have conversations with the universe and the clouds, and that was my whole meditative state right there.
Oh, that's cool.
Since then, I've brought it in a little bit. So I have found that I can do the meditations, I can do guided meditations, I can do just music. If I do it when I'm sleepy, I know I'm going to fall asleep, and I forgive myself for that. I'm just like, that's fine. But if I can concentrate and I can focus, then I get a lot more out of it. But that whole point of being in that meditative state or taking that time to just even talk through things, like, so not even the being quiet, but the talking through things and the looking at things from different points of view was enough to kind of help me reset. Right now, it depends on your lifestyle. When I was working full time and not doing my business, I didn't have a lot of time. So one thing that I did in the morning, and then I made sure, again, at nighttime, I gave myself the half hour to sit down and reflect on that. So I literally pulled a card in the morning. It took me 2 seconds, got out of bed, got ready, came back home, did all my stuff, worked, all that. And then just before bed, I'd pull it out and be like, okay, this is the card I had today. Where did it reflect in there? And that was a super easy way. I got to journal a little bit. And I kid you not, I used the smallest book possible. Okay, because I didn't have time. And I still do that today. Like I didn't have the time to do a 20-minute meditation, but I had 5 minutes to throw some words down. And that's how
Yeah.
that kind of started.
I love that. I appreciate
Hmm.
how both of you are sharing that. The truth be told, we are busy, right? If you are working a full-time job and you're wearing many hats, whether you are a parent, a caregiver, that no, we can't all sit there for like 15, 20 minutes. Like when my kids go to bed at 8, it was amazing. Oh, they're older now and they don't go to bed at that time. I go to bed before they do. And so I no longer have that time that I used to. And sometimes people then say if they don't have the time, then they are just not going to incorporate it. But how you are both sharing is that every little bit counts, whether it's 5 minutes. Like I love going out into nature. I think that automatically stills the mind, quiets it, and then gives you an opportunity for reflection to hear whatever voice that might trickle in. I love going by the water. I'm like maybe a half hour walk away, but there would be moments where I would drop the kids off and I'd be like, it's a nice day. Yeah, I'm gonna go sit by the water for a little bit and just clear my mind. And it would really help to refresh me away from the everyday, right? Because we have a tendency to wake up and do the same thing over and over. And that becomes a ritual that in some cases might drain you and make you feel like, ugh, it's just another day. Whereas taking those little moments of whether it's pulling a card or going for that walk in nature and through the forest or shutting everything off at 9 and just enjoying yourself by binge watching something and not then putting this pressure that I have to fit everything into one day or I have to fit everything into that week can absolutely overload your body. And then for healers, it's like overloading your body energetically. What are your thoughts then on those who are feeling like I don't have enough time and are in this perpetual motion of I just have to like robotic, right? I have to keep going and going. And then it's no longer happy. Like you're not feeding yourself in a way that makes you feel full. It just feels like another day.
Yeah, so this is the thing, right? This is why it's really important for me to literally go on shutdown mode at 9 o'clock at night because otherwise I'm going to end up becoming very zombie-ish and that will spill into the next day, and that is not what I want. I want to be productive during the day, right? That's really what it is. I guess the gist of it is to really find that downtime if you can. Now I understand, I mean, I dealt with caregiver burnout, so I understand that, that sounds like a luxury to some of those in that situation. Let me tell you that nothing that anyone told me to do at that time was going to make a dent because I was just so in a bad state. So, but here's the thing, even if it's just normal stress and everything, I really, really suggest that you take some time out of your evening to really, really get that downtime. Get that downtime. Just don't do anything. Just do what you enjoy. Read a book, binge watch videos that, make you that relax you. So that's really my advice.
So I have some little tidbits for this because I have spent so much time not having time that you're not going to make new time. You're not going to find it magically. In time, you can grow and learn and change the way you do things, which is great. But in the meantime, what can you do now? For me, I like to make my routines, my habits that I have to do. And what I do is I add an intention to it, which changes it into a ritual. Because once you add the mindfulness in, then all of a sudden it's something different. So one of the things that I've done over the time, when I'm having my shower, I'm having a shower and you can just go in and have a shower. But then I take 2 seconds and it literally is 2 seconds and I stand under the water and I'm like, and I clear off everything from yesterday or today or whenever you're having the shower and I let it wash down the drain. And then once I got that into a habit, a routine that I liked, and it was still a ritual because remember, if we're doing something and it's like, oh God, I forgot to do that, turn the shower back on, that's now a habit. It's not a ritual. It doesn't hold the same thing anymore. So then I added a piece to it. So it's almost like you stack it. So you do one thing, and then in time, you add something else. So the next thing I added was I actually put a rose quartz in my bathroom. And then before I'm finished my shower, I just run it over the body and saying I am protected with love. And it literally takes me 2 seconds longer, and I'm able to incorporate that in my day. Now, if something were to happen, I also believe in having grace with yourself. If you can't do it that one day and you literally got in, out, and you forgot, okay, do it tomorrow. Taking the spoon when you stir milk in your coffee or tea and saying, I intend for this day to, and fill in the blank, is another way to add it in really easily, again, in your normal daily routines.
That's good. That's good.
Done
I
a
love the
lot. I didn't
intention
have
piece.
time. I didn't have time. So I've done a lot of this as I kind of go and like, just what can I throw in here? Sometimes it's brushing your teeth and reading the affirmation that you stuck in the mirror while you're brushing your teeth.
I love that intention piece. The intention is very important. In that intention, you're being present. And if you're being present, whether you realize it or not, it stills you just for that moment, which means you're not thinking about the next thing that you need to do, or you're not worried about what you didn't do, but you're in that moment saying, okay, I'm here right now, and this is what I can do for myself, which is enough. And I think so many of us don't feel like we are enough and that we have to do more in order to be enough. But what you're both sharing is that it's taking care of yourself in the way that works for you can actually help you to grow and expand, which is clearly enough. Thank you for sharing that. Shelley, I know that before you worked with children and you are both mothers. So what would you say to parents out there who are trying to help their children find practices as they get older? It's easy kind of when they're young because they just have to follow whatever it is that you do. However, as they get older and they start creating their own identity, how do you then support your children in creating practices that help them as individuals?
So my daughter is actually shy of 23 now, okay? And here's the thing though, she didn't exactly witness the best of me while I was dealing with that horrible situation. And she was impacted as well. I mean, unfortunately, she's got some trauma there too. However, the good news is that she is actually finding her own ways to strategize and to basically find her own rituals that that keep her calmer and that can help her in many ways. I mean, she has ADHD, so she knows right off the bat what strategies and techniques she needs to be at her best. So she's actually very smart. She knows how to research and everything, the best things. She writes about the best things that help her. So I've got to say, maybe I did teach her some stuff at some point, but I'd say she's figuring a lot of this out on her own. I mean, I've taught her to do everything that feels right for her and to focus on what helps her the most. But you know what? I feel like she's taking the lead otherwise.
Miriam, you said it. You taught her. You showed her
Yeah,
techniques that worked for you.
yeah,
And then that helped her to discern what would work for her.
right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's basically what you can do
Yeah,
because we all have our own. I just wanted to clarify, I'm actually not a mother. I was never blessed, but I
oh,
have looked after a gazillion children and I treated them all as if they were my own because I wanted them to have a place that was safe that they could come to when they were away from home. But one of the things that I've shared with many parents is the being open for the communication. There's a fine balance between being open and helpful and being open but still having an opinion and not sharing that opinion, but also sharing your opinion. Like Miriam, you did it fantastic where you're like,
thank
this
you.
is what's working for me, and then your daughter took that and you didn't say, oh, well, that doesn't work for me. You were like, great, I'm glad that works. So having the children tune into their body is going to be a huge factor. So if you can teach that at a young age, then they can carry that forward, because that's our pendulum for everything. That's how we know if it's right for us or not, is the way we feel inside.
That makes sense for sure. That definitely makes sense.
I appreciate that. I appreciate how you both shared your viewpoint regarding that individual matters, that unique piece matters in terms of listening to your body, listening to what works for you, and then adjusting that. And that's exactly what I do too, right? We're only here to guide them, but I'm not here to be there, to kind of hold the strings. I always want to encourage them to explore and to figure themselves out, because we're constantly changing. I'm always trying to explore myself and figure out, as I continue to change and learn and evolve, that I have to adapt to that. And I appreciate that you both shared from that perspective. And Shelley, like, yes, you're not a mother, but as a caregiver, you guys are. You are definitely, we leave our children in your care as that second home to be able to nurture them just as we would. And then I love that openness to communicate, because I think that's super important, that when we leave our children in the care of others, that they are also modeling the same values that we take in, and that back and forth, that reciprocation is super important when raising children. And at the end, it does take a village. We can never do it on our own. So that support system is super important as we are raising our children, and not just raising our children, but also raising ourselves, right? Like, if you didn't grow up in an environment that felt safe enough to be yourself and to create practices, the importance of finding that community, or finding a smaller group, or just a friend as you continue to build and grow, is very important in building practices. Because, like what you both said, if you are ever feeling like you're different in some way, you might not feel comfortable or safe to be able to create these practices, or they might have been looked at as something that was very different, or you might have been judged for it, that you might not feel comfortable to even continue on with those practices. But that importance of finding community and finding like-minded individuals to help support you. If you've never dived into creating practices, if you've never done affirmations, because there's many people out there who are like, what? Affirmations? I've never heard of it. Or they would think, what? Like, does that even make sense, to be able to wash away that energy? But we know that those things do make a difference. Energy is all around us. And I think that is something that is important to understand. And I think that's something that we're learning over time, is that it's growing. It's becoming more of the norm for people to be able to share that. And that importance of finding community to help you to find those practices that will work for you, and what doesn't work for you, that's also okay as well. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being able to share your input and your insight. My last question, what would be your advice to anyone out there who is listening, but is brand new to their healing journey and wants to start that one little thing that would help them to just get the ball rolling? What would your advice be?
As uncomfortable and as ugly as this may sound, shadow work and therapy. Shadow work and therapy. Now, the thing is, I understand that therapy can be costly for many. And I also understand that insurance companies aren't all that great many times. But you know what? There's a lot of these apps like Talkspace that are a lot more affordable. So look into what you can do. I mean, I'd say the best type of therapy are the ones that you can sit, face to face, but it's not going to be accessible to everyone, right? So I think it's really important to talk to somebody, like a professional of some sort, while you do your own shadow work, because you want to make sure that if you do it on your own, you could end up risking unlocking something that could set you back, right? So I'd say, yeah, therapy, shadow work, and journaling too, before you can even start to think of yourself as being able to heal, because you gotta, look into what you can do to help yourself go there before you actually heal, because it's not easy. It's definitely not easy.
That's for sure. And just to add on that, 'cause that covers the bases. That's where you start.
Hmm.
Keep it simple. So
Yeah.
if you're looking to add something, pick one thing to add. And then they say it takes 21 or 27 days to change a habit. But to create the new habit and replace it and have it be automatic takes anywhere from 60 to 90.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So pick one thing to do. And then from there, you can then discern what else you would like to add on. With the journaling too, one of a tidbit, if you've got a small little book, make 3 things. I had one journal I had was mindfulness or gratefulness. What you were grateful for, you pick 3 things that day. And some days it was hard to pick, and I only put down 2. And then I had one that's mindfulness, which is literally one thing that you did today for you. Or whether it was like helping someone else because that made you feel good, but you literally could do one of those little books from the dollar store and put in what I liked, what I would change, and what I hope for tomorrow. And that's literally going to take you 5 minutes to do. And if it takes you any more than that, don't do it. Say, got nothing today and move on,
Yeah. Yeah.
have the grace, keep it simple, do the tough stuff because it's not going anywhere until you
Yes.
address it.
Very true.
Thank you guys so much. I wanted to add in as well the Hira Collective. Connect with people. We have amazing, amazing practitioners such as yourselves, healers such as yourselves. Like Shelley, you gave so many amazing tips. Miriam, you really gave it in a way that was like organic in terms of like, it's not easy because, people want to make it very fluffy. And, this healing journey is like, all love and light, and no, there are the shadows to it as well, and so it isn't easy. But if you can find people such as yourselves to support and to give it in a way that is easy to understand, then that is the most important thing. And you can find both of these practitioners on the Hira Collective. Not only that, but you can also connect with other people through the Hira Collective, through the community as well, and you can find them through modalities. You can find them through ailments and symptoms. And once again, very honored and grateful to have been able to have an entire week full of episodes where I got to connect with so many of you. It's great. I love to connect. I love to have these type of conversations. It feels very organic. It feels like just talking to some friends. It's not just that host and guest type of feel, but it's things where I can then take it afterwards and reflect. And I wanted to say thank you guys once again for coming on and gracing us with your presence.
Well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, this is the Ultimate Human Experience Podcast. We are out. Peace.